Hey guys, so last year when they were really building up hype for Doomsday and the Secret Wars announcement, Kevin Feige in an interview revealed that after Secret Wars, they were gonna have a sort of soft reboot of the MCU, which would feature two things: a focus on mutants, and also recasting some iconic roles so those characters can return to the main MCU without the burden of these major actors. On one hand, this is a huge risk because this is the first time since the MCU's inception where it will dabble into major recasts and relaunches, which DC is accustomed to by now. But also, it's kind of good at the same time because these characters should be allowed to live on in the MCU and continue in storytelling like they do in the comics, and there's so many stories left to tell. That's me looking at it from an objective perspective. Personally, I'm fine with us being done with all the main Avengers and the main MCU characters. They've had their moments, their storylines, their trilogies, and we can kind of let those characters rest, as the Marvel Universe has so many unexplored corners and characters that deserve this spotlight. So that's what this video is. It's my pitch for Phase 7, the Mutant Saga. This would be more focused on introducing and doing justice by the X-Men and displaying them in their full, colorful, crazy, wacky glory. I will be focusing on wrapping up some trilogies for already existing characters that fans love, while also sprinkling mutants throughout the MCU and exploring them in a way that hasn't been done before, and more in depth than has ever been done before. I have chosen to alternate between 2 and 3 movies a year, since that's what Marvel was doing at its peak. And I think after 2026 and 27 of only having one mainline MCU film, we will have had enough of a break to sort of go back to more regularly scheduled programming. So, I'll kick off 2028 with Black Panther, Throne of Wakanda. This would be the conclusion to Ryan Coogler's Black Panther trilogy, which he has already said that he's developing. We also know that Denzel Washington will be attached in some capacity, and I also wanted to introduce Aurora Monroe, aka Storm, into the MCU. We would also have what I'm assuming is an aged up alternate version of T'Challa's son as the main protagonist and the new male Black Panther. We would also have Shuri and him discussing who should take on the mantle. We would then move on to a show called Tales from Mutant Kind, which would lead us up to the first X-Men film. This show would be an anthology, and each episode would be about a different mutant being a different genre and creative team altogether. This would show the true nature of being a mutant, the good and the bad. Some episodes would be hopeful coming-of-age stories, and some would be horrific body horror stories about mutants whose lives were ruined by their mutant gene developing in puberty. For example, a character like Forget-Me-Not is typically used in a comedic sense, but here we could have a really dark and depressing episode exploring the mental repercussions of someone who lives life knowing that if someone loses eye contact with him, they forget who he is. History is broken, relationships are broken, he can't make any friends, he can't have a relationship. That would be something really interesting to discuss. And through this show, we would also sort of have a outside perspective of maybe why people are scared of mutants and why people have animosity to mutants. This would lead directly into Uncanny X-Men. This would be the grand entrance of the X-Men. It would tell a concise, enjoyable story consisting of Wolverine, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Storm, Beast, Nightcrawler, and Shadowcat, with some support from Professor X, obviously. I know this is a large roster, but I think with their popularity, it wouldn't be hard to juggle these characters. We would introduce Magneto and their Brotherhood, but they would be secondary antagonists, and the main villain would be someone we haven't seen in live action yet. For example, Mr. Sinister. We would then end the year with another show. A new type of show that I think Marvel should introduce for Disney+. This would be 4 episodes instead of 8, putting an 8-episode budget into 4 episodes to really make it a grand event. It would be called The Scarlet Witch. Now I know people want a movie, but I'm not sure that's in the cards anymore. To be honest, the Wanda section of the MCU has been building up on the small screen, and I think it would be wise to keep it there to keep most of that audience. It would be the grand conclusion to WandaVision, Agatha All Along, Vision Quest, and we would include Billy, Tommy, Wanda, Vision, Agatha, the Coven, and even throw Mephisto into the mix finally, and end this chapter with a bang, and give the fans a satisfying conclusion to Wanda's story, for now. We would then open 2029 with another mutant entry, Rogue and Gambit's Great Adventure. Or just Rogue and Gambit if you have no whimsy in your life. This would hit theaters Valentine's Day 2029. This is why they were absent from the first X-Men film. They are getting their own film. I chose them because I think they're pretty much the only X-Men characters out of these that, without any prior build-up, they could carry their own film. They are so popular and haven't really been explored in live action properly before. They're powerful, visually interesting, and their romance appeals to fans of every generation. This is the project that I personally want to see the most from them. One of the most powerful couples in comics, with great designs and great potential for antics. This would be Marvel's first action rom-com. It would be very romantic with an emphasis on their relationship to play well for Valentine's Day, while also having all the explosive action we would expect. It would be a current story about some wacky adventure they fall into, but feature flashbacks to their history and how they met. We would then follow that with Blade, the show. Listen, just scrap the idea of a film, the hype has died, Mahershala Ali is probably fed up, the scripts are in development hell, just make it a show and call it a day. We've had Blade films before, so let's take this chance to sort of really explore the world of vampires and the supernatural in the MCU, in the form of a show. That would then be followed by our next film, Doctor Strange, Sorcerer of Nightmares. This would basically be Marvel's Justice League Dark film, and have Wanda and Billy appear for sort of maybe a final fight. We'll have Clea as a supporting character, introduce magic, and have it be about Nightmare, who was originally going to be the main villain of Doctor Strange 2 before it was butchered into the abomination that it is today. It is still a Doctor Strange film though, and would explore his character on a more personal level. It would really be sort of a conclusion to his character arc. It would be a massive magic spectacle must-see film, and sort of have a conclusion for the mystical magical side of the MCU for now. We would then follow that with another show, Emma Frost. Simply put, she's extremely popular, proven by her recent addition in Marvel Rivals. She's never gotten a proper adaptation, and she's the people's queen. Let's make a project around her. Let's do a show where we can really explore the Hellfire Club, its roots, Emma's rise to power, her history, everything. It's begging to be made into a show. And this is also where I would introduce Psylocke and have it sort of be Emma Frost and Psylocke in a show. I know everyone would be tuned into that. The year would end with another Deadpool team-up film, sort of the sequel to Deadpool and Wolverine. I love for it to be Deadpool and Spider-Man, but I'm not sure if that would ever actually happen due to Sony and Marvel and the R rating. It's too many barriers to cross. But then I had a eureka moment. An extremely popular character that would be able to match, if not cross, Wolverine's sort of aura factor and that team up. Ghost Rider. Fans have been begging for a true adaptation, a modern adaptation for the character. He looks so cool, his powers are so cool, he would have great banter with Deadpool, sort of that deadpan comedy. It's perfect. Let's do Deadpool and Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider, but the twist would be we would have two Ghost Riders. Deadpool accompanies Johnny Blaze as he comes across Robbie Reyes, who's the new Ghost Rider of the MCU universe, and it would be a crazy adventure with two Ghost Riders and Deadpool. I would call it Deadpool and Ghost Rider, and the posters would play up it being a three-piece comedy instead of the duo of Wolverine and Deadpool. I think this is a slam dunk. So that's my first 2 years of the new MCU phase. I really wanted it to help wrap up a lot of major loose ends and trilogies that Marvel has had, while simultaneously introducing X-Men in a way that hasn't been done before, in a way that's sort of breaking new ground for them and sort of adding depth to those characters that have only really been seen in the comics. Let me know what you guys think,